All right, more and more people will probably be arriving here. Hi, Shannon. How are you? We're going to go ahead and get started. Um, I'll basically we just do a quick round of introductions. I'm assuming most people know everybody, but just in case, let's go through that. And then also an opportunity to give us any updates about you or your organization as we start this lovely 2022. Rolf, would you like to go first?
Okay, Rolf Tanberg, CPS technician. That's about it. Have been quiet for some time since Christmas.
Excellent. Shannon.
I'm making 4. Did you just call on me, Steve?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. For some reason I can barely hear you. I'm Shannon Sproul. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm Shannon Sproul. I'm the project director for Substance Use Disorder Connect.
Oh,
excellent. Kira.
See, that's good, Sam, and I keep track.
Did you say Kira?
Yeah, is my microphone not working very well?
It's very quiet on my end.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
interesting.
very
I'll see
quiet.
if I can bump it up here a little bit.
Kira Huck, I'm the state office director for Safe Kids Montana, led by Foundation for Community Health, and we also lead the local Safe Kids Missoula Coalition.
Thanks, Kira. Thanks for being here. Dodd.
Oh, Dodd McDermott. I'm a deputy fire marshal with Missoula Rural Fire. I don't know what else you need to tell me. There.
Rich.
Rich from the Missoula City Attorney's Office.
Excellent. And also, this is a great opportunity if you guys do have any updates or whatever. Sergeant Hebert.
Hey, Mike Hebert, Traffic Sergeant, Missoula Police Department. I guess a couple updates. Working on the early stages of getting all my traffic guys into car seat technician classes that are coming up in Missoula. And my 3-year-old just had a fall. Good to see everybody.
Samantha.
Hello, everyone. Samantha from Missoula County Road Court. I don't really have any huge updates, just kind of plugging along. We accepted 2 new referrals today. So that's going to put us up to 15 current participants. So that's pretty exciting. Other than that, we're just chipping along.
Excellent. Excellent. Kevin.
Hello, everybody. Kevin Dusko from Department of Transportation, State Highway Traffic Safety. Not much going on. We just released our federal funding opportunity for federal fiscal year 23, which is crazy. We're just evaluating the new highway bill that's coming down from DC, see how that might impact Montana. Besides that, business as usual.
Excellent. Excellent. Let's see. Where am I? Virginia.
Hello, everybody. I'm Virginia Braun. I'm just a concerned parent. Although my teenagers are grown and out of the house. I've been a member for years and just want to do everything I can to protect kids while they're growing up and maybe making bad decisions.
You're a superhero. Thank you. Judge Holloway.
Hi, good afternoon. Judge Holloway, I'm one of the justices of the peace here in Missoula. And a little shout out to Kevin Dusko and those MDT funds. Thanks for opening up the grants. We've been a recipient of that for a few years, hoping to continue that. Thanks, Mr. Dusko. And Sam kind of gave you the update on road court, and then also the ever invitation for anybody if they would like to come and observe road court. We conduct our staffings at 9 o'clock on a Thursday and start our docket at 9:30. So just reach out to Samurai if you'd like to be a part of that. And thanks for being here.
Excellent. Thank you. Sheila, I saw you just connected to audio. We're just doing introductions and any updates you might have.
Thanks, Steve.
Any updates?
Oh, updates. Yeah, I'll give you my update. I am presently teaching 3rd grade or 4th grade and kindergarten, working from home, covering for our traffic manager who's out sick, and losing my happy mind.
Oh, no. Oh, well, thank you for being here. Hopefully we can help. And Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a toxicologist at the Montana State Crime Lab, and I'm going to be doing a little presentation or a little bit in a few minutes here, I guess. And so those will probably be the majority of the updates that we're going to see from here. I apologize, I don't have a camera, so you can't see me even though I'm going to be speaking to you. So hopefully the information will be more exciting than my face would be.
Well, excellent. Thank you for being here, Michelle. And I'll just pass it along to you so you can do that update right away.
Okay, cool. I'm going to try to share my screen here. So hopefully we have permissions for that.
Yep, you should be good to go.
Hopefully you guys are seeing a presentation now.
Yes.
And it's filling the whole screen.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Let me find my other paperwork. So this is a presentation that my supervisor has put together multiple times for the MDT quarterly meeting. So I've just taken part of that and put it here so that we could look at some of the stats that we've collected. And then I also have the end of year report from 2020 because we haven't finished the information from 2021 yet. And then a quarterly report just to show you guys some snapshots of what we've been doing. If you guys have questions throughout any of this, though, please just unmute yourself and we can talk about it while it's on the screen. So first, we just wanted to highlight some stuff that we've been seeing here with the combination of THC and alcohol, because that's kind of a hot button topic. So looking at these, the first number of statistics that you see are the ethanol and cannabis found together. And I'm including all of the different compounds found in the THC product that we look for. So that includes THC and its metabolites. And then the next area that you see, which is THC and ethanol found together, those are just the ones that were THC positive and alcohol positive. So you can kind of see that we have slightly more cases that have the metabolites with just the cannabis than we do with just THC, but I like to present all the information there so people can see that it's still in the person's system. It just may not be acting on them at the time of driving. I don't really know, depending on what metabolite it is, because there's an active metabolite and there's an inactive metabolite of THC. So all that information is presented there. As you can see, we have different percentages. If you look at the very top here, the cases with the positive with the all is showing in all of the cases that we received at the crime lab for driving cases. So we have about 16.6% of cases that are positive for THC or for cannabinoids that we test for at the state crime lab, but we don't necessarily test for drugs in all of those cases. So we have a policy in place that if alcohol is over a 0.1, then we move on with the case and just report it out with the alcohol only instead of doing the drug testing. But all cases that have less than a 0.1 of alcohol go on to drug testing. So that's where this difference is here between the 16.6% and the 49% of the cannabinoids with THC found together. So of the samples that we tested for drugs, 49% of them had cannabinoids present, is the takeaway from that. So hopefully that's not too confusing. Just as a reminder, in these next slides, we're going to see some concentrations listed. And I just wanted to remind you guys that in Montana, we do have a per se of THC of 5 nanograms per milliliter, and we do have the per se of ethanol of a 0.08. And our averages in Montana are over those. So I have a slide that shows what our averages are in Montana for our top drugs in just a moment. We also wanted to highlight that we've been seeing a large increase in submissions. So we thought that perhaps with COVID, there would be less people out driving, and that was not the case. We actually had more DUI submissions in 2020 and even more in 2021. So this is just a quick snapshot to show the number of cases that have been submitted to the state crime lab that are driving related and the increases that we're seeing in our caseload.
Michelle?
Yes.
On this last slide, my question for you is, have you guys talked about why there are more cases? What's leading to the upward trend?
It's hard for us to know as the end recipient of the blood samples because it's a combination of factors, I would think. There's been a number of people that have moved to the state, so our population has increased. It could be that DUI enforcement has increased. It could be just a number of factors. If people are not using their intoxilizers as much, then sometimes we'll get more blood submissions than the intoxilizers, or it could just be that law enforcement is suspecting drugs more often, in which case they would need to get the blood sample to send it into the lab. So there's a bunch of different components that would go into that number increasing, and I don't really know which ones are to blame.
Thank you.
These are the top drugs that we see in Montana. As you can see, our average for 2020 for the ethanol is a 0.181, which is obviously over the 0.08. And that's pretty stable through most of the years that we've had that I've done stats for. I've been doing them since 2015, and the average is usually up about around the 0.18 for the alcohol. So that's pretty high. The average THC for 2020 was 10.4 nanograms per milliliter. And like I said earlier, the per se is 5. So we're definitely over that on the average. And then the other one that we're not going to talk too much about is methamphetamine, but that is a big problem in Montana. And our average is pretty high for that as well. I think we got 400 cases in 2020 that had methamphetamine in it, which is a pretty significant chunk of the drug work that we do here. Some other information that we've looked at is the age ranges for people who are positive for THCs, just because I know that we talk about kids a lot and the age groups associated with it. My supervisor and I wanted to pull those statistics together. They're grouped by year. So the top one is 2020, and then 19, and then 18. If we're looking at the 2020, you can see that the mean concentrations of the age ranges between 14 and 40 are all right around the 10 to 11 nanograms, which, like, again, the per se is 5. So that's over double for what the mean THC is for those ranges. And if you look throughout all the age ranges, they're at or above the 5 nanograms, which again is the average. So we've had some that are much higher and some that are lower than the 5, but the average overall ones are 5 or above. And then we also wanted to look at the case totals. So the number of cases that were within that age group. And you can see that there is a significant number of people that we have between the ages of 14 and 40. Again, those are the biggest chunk of DUIs that we have that are positive for cannabinoids and THC. So just interesting, because I know we talk about kids a lot. So wanted to have that information for you guys to see. Quickly, I did want to talk about, since we have THC that's coming out, and I think the speaker last time may have talked about the Delta 8. I can't recall off the top of my head, but this is a new emerging substance that we're seeing. So the traditional marijuana that we think about is the Delta 9 THC, but there is also Delta 8 THC that's coming out on the market. And both components, the Delta 8 and the Delta 9, are psychoactive, so they can have similar signs and symptoms. However, the Delta 8 THC is less potent than the Delta 9. I think there are some studies out there saying that you would need twice as much of the Delta 8 THC to equate to the same impairment level as you would the Delta 9. But this is a newly emerging drug, so it's one that we're still working on figuring out all the details on in toxicology in general. So just some information. There are some places out there that say they can sell you specifically Delta 8, or if you want a specific combination of the Delta 8 to the Delta 9, there's all different types of products people can buy out there. So this is one that we are seeing. It's one that is kind of sweeping the nation, that we're started to see trends throughout other states, and then it hit Montana. Luckily, we're one that usually gets hit last so that we know what's coming. And so we started looking for this drug, and we are able to determine the difference between the Delta 8 and the Delta 9 if it ever comes up in court, which is nice. And we're able to discuss the potentially impairing effects of those drugs. Lastly, for the slides that I have here are just some extra trends that we're seeing and that we saw in 2021 and are continuing now in 2022. There's a lot of benzodiazepines, which are in the central nervous system depressant class, which is the same class as alcohol. And we are seeing some designer drugs in that category that are not prescription, are not sold in the United States. They're only sold on the internet and people are getting them shipped in. And we're seeing emerging drugs all the time in this category. We also saw a pretty big increase in the fentanyl cases that we had in 2021, and it seemed to increase every quarter. So much so that on this quarterly report that I'll show you from the third quarter, it actually made one of the top 5 drugs that we were detecting. So I can show you that now. Hopefully I won't lose you all on the screen here. So this is the quarterly report. Hopefully you guys can see it. I know it's kind of small. I can zoom in if we want to look at it closer.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So this is just kind of a breakdown, and I give quarterly reports out when we finish working on the cases. So obviously we haven't finished working on all the cases for 2021 yet, but so these are the third quarter stats that I have. And some of you, I think, get this automatically. So this is not exciting news for you, but just to give you a breakdown of what we see, I like to break it down on this number of cases that we get that are driving related at all, and then the next line is the number of cases that we actually do drug testing on. So those would be cases that are either below the 0.1 alcohol concentration, or the ones that we've had specifically requested that we go back and do drug testing. And then I do a whole bunch of percentages to show the number of cases that were positive for alcohol at all. And then the number of cases, or the percentage of cases that were positive for drugs other than alcohol. So you can see kind of the breakdown of what we see. The alcohol detected only was 74% of our cases. And then if you look down to the next line, it's alcohol and drugs. So only 9% of our cases really have both alcohol and drugs in them. However, we do have that big caveat that if it's over the 0.1 alcohol, then we don't really go on to do drug testing unless it's special circumstances anyway. So we know that we're probably missing cases, but we just can't run them all because we don't have the resources for that. In the cases that we only detected drugs was 26%. So obviously we have a much bigger alcohol problem. With 74% of the cases having alcohol detected in them only. And then we only have a very small percentage of cases where we don't detect any drug or alcohol. And those are usually crashes or fatals or something where Highway Patrol takes samples and sends them in, even if they don't necessarily suspect impairment based off of field sobriety tests or roadside tests. I also like to break down what the average blood alcohol concentration is and which cases are over, or how many cases we had over the 0.1 versus under the 0.1. So you can see those listed here. And then the average BAC this last quarter 3 of 2021 was 0.176. So still really close to that 0.18 that we usually see annually. And then the range that we have for the alcohols is pretty normally between a 0.02 and somewhere in the 0.4s, which is a very high alcohol concentration. Especially for drivers, there are some people that would be dead at that level. So I always find it pretty amazing that some people are actually driving the cars. The underneath that is the most detected drugs that we have in that quarter. And I usually try to do the top 5. So this is not including alcohol because alcohol is the most detected drug that we see. But aside from alcohol, it's cannabinoids, methamphetamine. This quarter we had fentanyl, diazepam, citalopram, and diphenhydramine. And so then I like to break it down again based off of how many submissions we get and then how many of the ones we actually did drug testing on. So that's what the percentages are listed there. And then I also put the ranges so that people can see what the low and what the high concentration was that we had for that quarter. And then the last thing down there is the number of drug recognition evaluations that were performed within that quarter, just to give an idea of how many cases we had for those. So that's the quarterly reports. And then pretty soon what I'm going to have out hopefully is the 2021 annual report. This one is 2020, just to give you guys an idea for that. It's a lot of the same information that's in the quarterly reports, except with the addition of this bottom section down here, where my supervisor and I decided in 2020 that it would be really helpful to break it out. I think it may have actually been a suggestion by Kevin Dusko to break out the THC and alcohol combinations with the different types of driving cases that we had. So DUI, crash, fatal, in order to see what the concentrations were of the alcohol and what the concentrations were of the THC for the different types of incidents. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again this year, and we'll be able to look at it and see if they've changed at all or if they've remained steady through those different types of driving scenarios. So I like to keep this to a page. But if you guys have any recommendations or suggestions, just let us know and we'll get it added to the list, because this is a fluid document. And we just like to have it so we can give a snapshot to our user agencies so that they can see what's going on in Montana in general. But that's really all I had. Yeah.
Michelle, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
On the detail that you put on the 2020 report, you have the average concentrations for fatal accidents, and then you have crash plus fatal. Are there fatals that don't involve crashes?
So there are crashes that don't involve fatals. And so that's where the split comes up. I would imagine that most fatals are crashes, but sometimes not. Sometimes there are crashes that are not fatals. So we separate them out that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Yes.
How many technicians do you have that are testing samples?
There are 8 of us that are doing all of this work.
And how long does it typically take, like, once you receive a sample, to test it, file the report, and move on to the next one?
For alcohol-only cases, our goal is to get those out within 2 weeks. For drug work, it can take longer depending on the complication of the case. If there's a lot of drugs involved, then it can take longer. So our goal for that is 2 months for cases that have drugs, but usually we get them out a little sooner than that. It just depends on how many drugs are involved.
Wow. That's fascinating. Any other questions by anybody?
Hey, this is Kevin Dusko. I don't necessarily have a question, just a comment. Michelle, you're always great providing this data. Appreciate you breaking down the different elements, especially with recreational adult use marijuana upon us. So look forward to just kind of seeing these trends as the months and years go by. And I'm probably going to tap you in, or at least ask you to maybe provide this information to my next statewide group meeting, if that's all right. I won't put you on the spot though.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some more data for you for that. So we're just waiting on getting the cases done.
No, this is great. Thank you again.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right, wonderful. Huge round of applause. Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that. super valuable information. I love the info. That's great. I see Shannon doing an applause there and the little icon thing. That's wonderful. Which is going to move us on to the next part of the agenda. And if we don't have time to get through all of this today, because I know we only have an hour, and I have to be done at 1, if not even a little sooner. But I wanted to put up some brainstorming session ideas for us to consider. With THC now being legal for adult use here in Montana, I just wanted to throw it out a little bit to see what your thoughts are. My boss, Lisa Biskevich, keeps asking me to do a billboard of some sort. And so I wanted to ask the group about ideas for a billboard for Drive Safe Missoula. Do we do, if you see on the agenda, do we do a DUI specific billboard that's related to alcohol only or marijuana only, since it's a new thing? Or do we do a polysubstance use combining both, drugs and alcohol? Or do we do a seatbelt specific tying in, Buckle Up Montana billboard? Or do we do a car seat specific billboard? Or do we do one that just sort of directs people to Drive Safe Missoula, the website, and they can figure it out from there? Any initial thoughts? And I guess before that, I guess I do have a question for Kevin. Kevin, is the state doing anything specifically? I know I've seen around here in the Missoula area the NHTSA billboard where it shows like a marijuana leaf and it says on there, "Consider this a sign to not drive high," or something like that. I'll see if I can find it. Does the state have any plans for statewide marketing or advertising related to marijuana and driving?
Yeah, so not right now, but part of the new highway bill is that there's some language in the federal language that states should consider implementing a statewide educational campaign for those states that have passed adult use recreational marijuana. So it will be coming down the horizon, probably a slow moving ship. And with that, there are some funds that have historically been restricted to just alcohol only. They loosened up the funds that we could use alcohol and impairing substances. So historically, we've had some constraints just because of the use of funds. But moving into federal fiscal year 24, we're going to have some more discretion. So nothing anytime soon. Sorry, Steve, but probably the next year or two.
Okay. Excellent. Judge Holloway.
So I would support a sign that shows somebody drinking a beer, sitting and looking at somebody vaping or smoking a joint or going into the pot store or something that just says, "Dude, be careful, you can get a DUI for marijuana too." I just feel like DUIs are always stigmatized towards alcohol. With the new marijuana, we need to get people thinking about that. And why not do a double whammy with both of them? That would just be one of my suggestions. Because I see that, I'm sorry, Kevin, but I see that MDT billboard and I read it 3 times and I'm like, dude, I don't know what this sign is saying. Am I missing something? And so I don't know that it was as clear. Or maybe I wasn't thinking clearly, but I think if you get the people in the act together, having a discussion might be beneficial.
Yeah, here I'll this is the billboard.
Yeah, and hey, Judge, good to see you again. No offense taken, because that's not an MDT sign. So, yeah, that's straight from NHTSA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah.
I agree with Judge Holloway. I think there are a lot of people who assume if it's legal, And if it's marijuana, I think we've done a good job about educating people about the problem of driving drunk, but I think the whole campaign and sort of the cultural sense of marijuana is it's not dangerous. And I think that we do need to tell people, yeah, when you drive high, you're in several kinds of danger. You're in danger of getting in an accident, and you're in danger of getting a DUI. Because I don't think the public knows that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Steve, I can tell you in the few that I've seen roll across my caseload, we are seeing a very high number in regards to THC. And, not double the limit, not triple limits. In some cases, 20 nanograms or 27 nanograms coming. And these people are driving down the roads. I would agree that it has to be something with alcohol and pot. And that's not counting the alcohol and other polydrugs in their system or just straight drugs.
So I got a loud dog barking in the background here, so I'm trying to keep it muted for a second. Okay. Yeah, no, I think so. So I think that might be the route to go. Obviously it's current. It's something that everybody's been thinking about. Everybody's been watching. So a billboard related to alcohol and marijuana DUIs would be the way to go. Would you guys all agree?
I do like that. This is Shannon. I think it's important to address, this is a new thing. Let's get right on it and start educating people right away about the repercussions.
Is there, Steve, I was going to tell you too, when we did the first few stories about the impending legalization of recreational marijuana, I got a number of I got one rant that went on for about 5 minutes on my phone from one guy that insisted there is absolutely no research whatsoever that says that you can't imbibe marijuana and drive. And then we got several messages and some text messages from people who are convinced there's absolutely no good research behind these per se limits. And I think that we're going to have to address that.
Sheila, I think that's a good point. This is Leah. I think that in other states that have done outreach campaigns, it's really important to have the data to back up what you're talking about on hand, if not even put it right on your website right away, address it every single time somebody brings it up, just because I don't think that there is research out there, but I think just having that quality research to back you up is good.
And I think if we put that billboard together, that of course would have the Drive Safe Missoula logo on there, and I don't want to have too much information on a billboard. I know, and you'll probably be the one to help out with this the most, as far as making sure that it's designed correctly by doing so. But I know most say not to have more than 7 words on a billboard. And if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then use a picture. So I want to create something that would, one, obviously not be too much of a distraction. I don't want somebody taking their eyes off the road too long trying to either read a billboard or figure out the meaning behind the billboard. There's a billboard on I-90 that I believe is right around Airway Boulevard that every time I drive back and forth from Frenchtown, I have actively been looking at this billboard trying to figure out what it was. I knew it was for a candy shop, or at least I was assuming it was for a candy shop. I finally had to pull it up, I believe 2 days ago, on Google Maps to look at it. and it turns out it's the candy shop down in Darby, of all places. And there's just so much going on this billboard that 10 times or more that I've driven by this thing trying to figure out what it was, I could not figure out. There's just too much information on it. But I've wanted to utilize it as an example of what not to do as far as billboards go. Because I was actively trying to figure it out and I couldn't do it. So I don't want to go that route in any way, shape, or form. So I like the idea if we can portray that message of a beer drinker talking to a marijuana user and saying, dude, you can get a DUI driving high also. That's a great message. I think that's a genius way if we can create an image that says all of that, from a glance. That's wonderful.
What goes through my head right now is close up of driver and patrolman, in the distance, patrol car and cars obviously off the road, and all the billboard says is 1 toke over the line. And I'm not sure if that's copyrighted or not. But if it could just say 1 toke over the line equals DUI, it might be too obscure for people that are under 50. But
yeah,
I think something like that just basically says, yes, you can get pulled over, and yes, you can be impaired, legally impaired. But I'll work some more on that idea. But I agree, we need to educate them. I think we also, and I think Shannon might have, and Leah might have some ideas on that, and especially Kira, how we can reach out to parents. Maybe a parent safe driving checklist, kids in seats, check, all windows visible, check, no impaired drivers, check, something like that.
Yeah, I think too, like education. I know that Safe Kids last month was talking about like dosages, and I think that educating parents on what a dose is, if they're going to be driving, right? Like I know that one person cited that you could have up to 10 doses in one gummy bear, and having people know that. Yeah, so that would be for any adult, who purchases marijuana, including parents.
Yeah, I think Leah's highlighting a good point when it comes to edibles, because, like she mentioned, they may be buying, a bag of gummy bears or cracker type edibles and not really thinking about the dosage. Because you could sit down and eat a bag of gummy bears that are regular gummy bears, but when they have THC in them, it's a different story. And so that was just something the speaker that we talked with pointed out a lot, was just the dosage, and people maybe not always being aware of that.
Yeah, I think with the multiple coalition aspect, from Healthy Missoula Youth to Safe Kids to us, hopefully we can, hit this idea or at least provide that education from, multiple avenues. So people will hopefully clearly get the message, if that makes sense. Because I'm worried about those accidental overdoses, accidental ingestions from children, pets, even all sorts of different things. It's going to be interesting to see how it moves forward. Sergeant Hebert, have you seen anything in the first 13 days of this that has been outstanding or remarkable?
For us, I think it's too early to tell. I mean, this is something I've been through DRE and been a DRE for quite a while, and this has been something that's been on the radar of law enforcement, especially poly drug kinds of DUIs, and definitely marijuana. I think it's going to take time to see what exactly this next step of legalization does. But I expect there'll be more. I think it's right that people don't understand that you are impaired when you're high and that it does have an effect on driving.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so I will probably reach out to a few of you if you specifically would like to work on helping craft the message, the design, or whatever the case may be that will ultimately, lead to a billboard. Additionally, tying into that, because I like to do a multi-prong approach as well. So not necessarily only a billboard and call it good, but likely I'd create brochures that we would hand out during events that would tie into the message of the billboard, whether we're using the Respect the Cage exhibit, things that we can hand out there. Additionally, a series of social media posts and blog posts, and probably an entire web page on the Drive Safe Missoula website as it relates to this as well. If those of you are interested in helping out with that, definitely. Otherwise, I'll probably get to work on that and probably share out some information with everybody. And if you're okay looking at it and giving me a thumbs up or a thumbs down or what the heck are you thinking, Schmitty? I would never do it that way. I'm fine with that too. So Sheila says, I would love to hear from everyone when you think a drug impaired... let's see, scroll up there. When a drug impaired driver, what picture comes to mind? When you think of a drug impaired driver, what picture comes to mind? I would say if you ever watched Super Troopers. Anybody else? What comes to mind when you think of a drug impaired driver?
I think oftentimes we think of somebody, we picture somebody heavily tatted up and the stereotypical approach to drug impaired drivers, but I almost feel like we need to make sure it's projected as the normal, everyday, average person, because that's probably the larger population out there, to get people thinking otherwise.
I was a little shocked to see how high the number of the youngest drivers who were impaired was, and because that's not who I think of. I was thinking that the marijuana users were going to be 40 to 60, and they're certainly in that group. But the youngest drivers, which I think of especially young drivers as driving too fast most of the time as well. The idea of them with their foot on the gas pedal impaired is terrifying.
While on their phone, while tailgating. Yeah.
I think it's interesting now because I know that we need to get some more data. The Montana Prevention Needs Assessment talks about how many youth are drinking and driving, but they don't ask about using marijuana and driving. And it seemed to me like looking at those numbers, there are quite a few 14 to 18 that are doing that. And I know that the message about not drinking and driving definitely was sinking in more with young people, but I'm not sure about the marijuana and driving.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Going off of that, I also think when I think of impaired driver, I think of like a college age person, but it has been really interesting in road court. Our participants have been the majority 30 or 40-year-old successful people with jobs. So I think keeping that in mind too.
Yeah, definitely. And, speaking from my personal experience, for those of you that might not know, back when I worked for the Missoula Forum for Children and Youth, I think Leah actually came into the forum after I had left, and then it switched to MUSAP and now Healthy Missoula Youth. Back then, I was doing a media lit presentation, and it was disguised as a substance use prevention, presentation, disguised as media lit. And in there, I would talk specifically about alcohol use and making choices, and it's kind of like the premise on the whole young drivers in control aspect of being in control and not wanting to relinquish control to a person or a substance or whatever the case may be. Well, my sister, who was at the time that I was giving the presentation, I had to leave and fly to Washington, D.C. And I spent several days in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, I got to watch my sister die from basically the lifelong overconsumption of alcohol. And she was a high-paid lawyer for the Justice Department in the tax division. And you would probably never guess looking at her or her family, but I promise that the last several years of her life, she was never not impaired somewhere or another with alcohol. From the time she woke up in the morning, she started drinking until she went to bed at night. And I'm sure with her 3 young kids in the car driving in Metro DC traffic all the time, I'm sure that her BAC or blood alcohol content was, well enough to get a DUI at any given moment. So oftentimes, like when people say, hey, picture that person behind the wheel, what would they look like? I see my sister. Like that's what it looks like to me. And that might not be somebody who we would even give a second look at in our community, but I think that's probably more prevalent because we don't get it, or we don't take a second look at somebody who would consider, middle class or upper class or very successful or working or whatever the case may be, that that they skate by and they get away with it. Many a time I've wished over and over that sometime early on that my sister would have got a DUI or a second DUI or whatever the case may be, because maybe it would have put her into a situation where she could have been, a subject in road court, and she would still be here today, but she's not. And so, it's kind of a sad situation for her family, her kids, and all that stuff as well. But I think that, looking at the target, the most people are between 14 and 40 years old as far as getting the DUIs or that we're testing high from what Michelle, put up there. I think that should be our target market for sure.
Yeah, and I think this conversation has really kind of highlighted a piece that I think is really important, that whatever messaging comes out, I think we have to keep that judgment out of it. Because the second you introduce that, I think the conversation's over. I think it's, focusing on what can we agree on. And hopefully we can all agree that we want people to be safe and we can agree on that. And then, leave the judgment behind and just focus on what's important to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to make sure that I want to make sure that we're designing something that avoids the psychological reactance, that avoids the moral disengagement, that, because one thing that might resonate with you might not resonate with somebody else in the community. So how do we, formulate a question in a sense to where whatever answer they come up with, it's true to them. Otherwise, they would not have answered the question that way. It's a key in marketing. It's a key in sales. How do we ask everybody the right question to where, I might say, well, I want a red pickup, and Kira might go, well, I want a blue Corvette, and Sheila's like, well, yeah, I'll take a black Ferrari, you know, and Samantha's driving around, you know, in a a flying car, whatever the case may be. Like, how do we ask the question of what vehicle is right for you? What way can we ask you to say that, yeah, don't drink and drive, don't drive impaired, whatever the case may be? How do we ask that question to where everybody comes up with their own right answer, you know?
Steve, I don't know, like, it might be really interesting to show, I don't know if the group has seen that thing that was put out by the Center for, oh, no, I can't remember what it's called, the Center for
Health and Safety Culture.
Yes, thank you. Because I really liked what they did, because they had like a pot shop owner as well as someone from Highway Patrol, like doing joint commercials about like the fact that we don't want people to drive impaired, and that includes people in the weed industry. You know, we don't want people to endanger themselves. So
Yeah, that was the presentation we had last month with Dwayne Smith from Colorado. That was one of his biggest pieces was get the dispensaries involved. Because hopefully they have the same interest, and that seems to be the case from experience from others, is that they want the same thing. They want people to be safe. So that was one of his biggest pieces of advice, was involve them and get them at the table.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I will try to find that because I remember us talking about that a while back as well, and I'll see if I can't create a blog post. Can I get a thumbs up from everybody that if I create the blog post that you could share it, whether it be on your organization's Facebook page or your personal page, whatever the case may be. I've been trying to share a little bit more personal info, or I guess my work stuff on my personal page when it comes to DUI and all that stuff. Because obviously, I was gonna say I have more people that I'm friends with personally, but that sounds kind of weird. Okay, I only have 3 friends on Facebook. All right, I admit it. No, I'm just kidding. But if we could help get that word out, that'd be spectacular on that. Okay, so I will work on all of that stuff and then reach out to you. Feel free to reach out to me if a thought comes across your brain and you're like, oh, I need to tell Schmitty about this, or I saw this billboard, or I had this idea, or whatever the case may be. Please shoot me an email or give me a phone call, or whatever the case may be. We got about 6 minutes left here. I want to talk quickly about we talked a little bit about earlier today at the Safe Kids meeting. Missoula Emergency Services Child Car Seat Fitting Station is no longer. Kathy is no longer with Messi, so we don't have a fitting station there, and we are looking for different ideas for a potential fitting station. It could be Messi. It could be some sort of other organization. Is anybody aware of one that might have a CPS tech or is looking to have future techs that might be a good fit for this? We talked a little bit about this at Safe Kids earlier today. And this could be whether we approach maybe a city fire department, or we look at, I know the law enforcement agencies are, super busy these days. But do we look at, maybe a partnership with city police department, the sheriff's department, the highway patrol, where we have CPS techs there?
I was just gonna say too, like, just for anybody who was on this call that would maybe consider serving as a fitting station. It can be very set times, like you can do it like once a month for like a 2 or 3 hour period. It's not like it has to be a constant, like on call, do car seat checks whenever kind of thing. Like rural fires, of course, is second Saturday of the month from 10 to 2. So it can be very controlled, so it's more manageable for facilities or agencies to coordinate.
Has anybody reached out to Lauren at Southgate Mall? She's done a number of child-oriented events, and they do have that space down by Shields where the Saturday market is. That might be appropriate for that.
Do you think she'd be willing to certify staff? Because that's kind of the other challenge is it's not just like a location, it's really like an agency that can certify some of their people to be techs. Doesn't mean that we don't have other people that can't come help occasionally, but
yeah, that might be another issue. If staffing wasn't such an issue right now, I would say, the Western Montana Clinic location that is there at the mall might be a good one. They also have space outside their door that they could hold a fitting station. But I think right now the answer would be no because of staffing issues, but not necessarily in the future. And that's something I'm certainly happy to bring up to Stephanie or to Lauren. I honestly don't know what they have a fairly big security force at Southgate Mall, and these are all quasi law enforcement people, so they might have an interest in becoming certified.
What
That's
about the
interesting.
YMCA?
That might be right.
Seems like a somewhat logical place, and they have, substantial parking lot. They have a number of people who are permanent staff and that could be trained potentially. You could talk to Heather. And I'm curious, you mentioned that all fire stations, I'm not really clear. No?
Yeah, right now only one Missoula Rural Fire Station, which is their main headquarters on South and Reserve. They're a fitting station. They do it on the second Saturday of every month. However, what Messy did, even though they did it on a certain day of the week every single month, Kathy was able to handle those calls, and we get them all the time where somebody calls in and they're like, hey, we're going into the hospital in 4 days to have a baby. I heard we need a car seat. Can we get a car seat? And it could be the day, it could be the Monday after the second Saturday of the month, and they're calling on their way to, essentially on their way to the hospital, and they need a car seat. And it's a situation where I might be busy with something. I can't, drop what I need to do. I oftentimes, will send them directly to Messy, going, call Messy, schedule an appointment with them, and they could go there and get their car seat fitted at any time, essentially. And Kathy would schedule with them because she was usually there at one location. She has a storage unit. She had car seats available. Where I'm working out of my home right now, I don't have a place for car seats other than my desk at the health department, which is where they're all at right now. And I have to stop what I'm doing, go pick up a car seat, go meet them where they are, and it could ruin an entire half day for me. One car seat install. So that's where it'd be nice to be able to have somebody else who wants to provide this service, or some organization where, say it was, YMCA or whatever, I could be like, hey, call and schedule them. Maybe they'll do it, at their convenience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a large conversation that has there's a lot of things that go into this conversation. And part of it is just, and we have this conversation constantly at Safe Kids, is just how do we better encourage families to plan ahead. because like Steve said, I literally 2 weeks ago had a family call me. They were driving to the hospital because the wife was in labor and they wanted their car seat checked right now. And so just, that's another part of the conversation, is how do we better encourage families to plan ahead and do this ahead of time, so it's not last minute, because it is really hard when you're getting those last minute calls, because it can end up taking half your day. But when people are planning ahead, then you can refer them to Missoula Rural Fire, and then they know that, okay, next month, second Saturday of the month, I have an appointment at this time with Rural Fire to get my car seat checked, and it just makes things so much easier when that happens. But with, like Steve mentioned, Messy not being a fitting station anymore, having another fitting station to refer them to at an alternate time is helpful, because sometimes that second Saturday doesn't work for people. And so if we have an alternative option, that helps kind of limit those challenges with last minute checkups.
Well, I think and I don't want to hijack the conversation and, have run on and on with it. But it seems to me like the YMCA is generally open 7 days a week. So is Parks and Rec. That might be another place to consider, and maybe other fire stations. If the one on South and Reserve is doing it on the second Saturday, can we get the one that's located by Costco to do it on the first Saturday, and the one that's located at the bottom of the Rattlesnake to do it on the third Saturday? Stuff like that. But anyway, maybe that's more conversation for a different time, because I know we're at our time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Kira?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's definitely a part of a larger conversation, because the other challenge is just getting the people certified, because it is a 4-day course, and that can be a challenge for people too, to get enough staff certified to actually manage a fitting station, because it does take a number of people. And I think there's just a lot more that goes into fittings than people realize sometimes. Like, I think people think it's going to be like a 5-minute thing, and it's half hour, sometimes more if it's a complicated. I've had 1.5 hour car seat checks when it was just a really complicated scenario. So there's just a lot that goes into it. But so I think it is just kind of a matter of having a conversation with some of these places that are that people are mentioning as ideas, so that they really understand what goes into it and are well equipped to handle a fitting station, and how we could, as Safe Kids, how we could help support that too, because we're more than willing to, if there's certain things we can do to help them support that fitting station happening, we'd be more than happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, excellent. All right, we are 104. We are a little bit over time. Thank you for sticking around. We will continue this conversation probably for the next couple months as we try to figure this out. So I appreciate you all being here today. Be sure to check out the blog for any new updated posts. I'll send out an email when I do the one post, if I can find the one for the Center for Health and Safety Culture, on the pot shop owner and the law enforcement officer. I'll try to create that here in the next day or two and get that out and about. Thank you all for being here once again.